at Mar-a-Lago the other day. There was a recording of it. The president was asked complimented by someone. Thank you, Mr. President, for your service. And the president replied saying something like, "We're not finished yet." So tuck that away. Tuck that away with his farewell comments when he said, "We will never surrender." And the speech he gave in Georgia in December, "We will never give up. I'll see you later. I'll be gone, hopefully not too long, in a new form. I've set things up. Everything's in place for the new administration," wink, wink, and so forth and so on. So keep all of that tucked away when we get doubtful of the resurrection of our country, the restoring of the public, when President Trump perhaps returning soon. So keep all of those things in mind, as well as just yesterday on the golf course, we're not finished yet. And I always say, remember, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, well, it's not quite the end. All right, let's get into some of the highlights of what happened last week. The effort to recall Governor Gavin Newsom. There's great news there. Looks like this could happen. Let's see how it plays out. Efforts to recall California Governor Gavin Newsom reached 1.5 million signatures, and proponents of the recall have raised more than $1.7 million. The petition could result in Newsom being the second governor in California history to be recalled. Organizers of the Recall Gavin 2020 needed 12% of the voters' signatures for a successful recall ahead of the March deadline. Back on November 6, 2020, the Superior Court Judge James P. Arguelles extended the signature deadline for the recall from November 17, 2020 to March 17, 2021. So that's good news. They claim to currently be receiving around 100,000 signatures per week. And with 7 weeks left, they feel confident they will get more than enough needed to secure a removal. Boy, music to California's ears and music to my ears. It's recallgavin2020.com. So you can check it out. Recallgavin2020.com states that Gavin must go for many reasons, including the following, quote, unaffordable housing, record homelessness, rising crime, failing schools, independent contractors thrown out of work, exploding pension debt, and now a locked down population while the prisons are being emptied. Hold Gavin Newsom accountable. Gavin Newsom must go, the site says. So they say, are you tired of being locked up, unable to make a living at the same time as California's prisons are being emptied? Do you wonder why Gavin Newsom's cronies are building supportive housing for the homeless at a cost of over $500,000 per unit instead of just getting them help in less expensive facilities and programs? Then join the Recall Gavin 2020 movement. One of his most notorious moves during the COVID-19 crisis was to get caught breaking his own protocols. Gavin, as you know, was caught out to dinner, fine dining French restaurant, as I recall, in November, without a mask, of course, sitting close to his friends during his stay at Home Orders. Many were outraged at his rules for thee and not for me approach, and he eventually apologized for the act. Apology not accepted at this end, sir. California is one of the 19 states that allow voters to remove state officials before the end of their term. April 29th is the deadline for counties to verify signatures. So we'll see what happens to Gavin Newsom. It certainly looks like it has great potential. There'll be follow-ups to that story for sure. Another thing that is worthy of mentioning in our weekend wrap-up here, the 40,000-foot view, is, of course, the recently exploding GameStop story. Here's the update. All eyes have been on the stock market in the last 48 hours, up 600, down the next day up 400, now down 500, this sort of a thing. So everyone's been watching the markets after the popular Reddit page called Wall Street Bets took the market by a storm and drove up the stock prices on GameStop so dramatically that the value has risen a total of around 1,700% this month, going from being valued at $2 billion to $24 billion. Investment firms who shorted stocks have lost billions of dollars on the squeeze. Funny how this is all playing out. Well, of course, the SEC said late Wednesday that it was monitoring the volatility in options and equities markets and working with our fellow regulators to assess the situation. And by Thursday, popular trading app Robinhood abruptly froze the sale of GameStop stock and restricted many of the accounts connected to the Wall Street Bets group. This effectively lowered the stock price and manipulated the market, therefore doing exactly what Wall Street accused the Reddit community of doing. The move erupted chatter all over the Twitter sphere and surprisingly united people from both sides of the political fence. Interjection here. This is going to be happening now on many fronts. Now that the belligerent occupiers are in our White House, or seemingly so, unless it's a studio set, but you get my point. During this period of time, we're going to see more and more things where the opposing teams agree, like child sex trafficking and pedophilia. Well, most people disagree with this move here with Wall Street and the bankers. There are going to be many things that come forward now that actually raise the awareness for people that maybe didn't vote for the president or just despise President Trump, but will have had it up to their eyeballs, and people will see more and more and more. And therefore, I'll come back to that at the conclusion. I'll tie that together, what this means in a very optimistic sense for the true plan moving forward. But here we have Ted Cruz and AOC and Donald Trump Jr. were all in agreement that it was highly questionable that Robinhood was essentially forcing the crash. Day trader David Portnoy responded. He said, "When I saw what Robinhood was doing, ironically, Robinhood took from the rich and gave to the poor, even though they do the exact opposite, even though they did the exact opposite." Portnoy says he was stunned. He said, "I think it's criminal. I think there has to be an investigation. I think people have to go to jail." When you have AOC and Don Jr. both on the same side of an issue, you know something is dramatically wrong. Yeah, it's called exposure of the rigged systems and crimes that affect everyone now, and therefore they're meeting together. What a concept. Things took a turn for the even stranger when a Robinhood whistleblower by the username of Odin19199 told the Reddit community that it was a phone call from Sequoia Capital and the White House that forced Robinhood to shut down the sale. So due to mounting public pressure, Robinhood lifted the restrictions late Thursday night, and the stock was already up 75% pre-market. This story is the perfect example of how big tech, big banks, Wall Street not only control the market, but control the people. Needless to say, big banks fund both sides of every war since World War I forward, probably, and reap the profits. But the people are no longer accepting the status quo, and the matrix is now exposed and beginning to crumble. It's a wonderful thing. What else happened this week in the 40,000-foot view? This is really stunning. We're sending the document out, the PDF. It's a one-pager with much more information than I'm citing here. We're going to send it out to everybody who's subscribed to AmericanMediaPeriscope.net, whether it's premium or free. But the acting secretary, Department of Homeland Security, has issued a national terrorism advisory system. Now, as I read this, read between the lines, folks. Read between the lines. So this National Terrorism Advisory System makes me wonder what they have planned. But the bulletin, released this bulletin due to a heightened threat environment across the United States, which the DHS believes will persist in the weeks following the successful presidential inauguration. Listen to these words. Information suggests that some ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority and the presidential transition, as well as other perceived grievances fueled by false narratives, could continue to mobilize to incite or commit violence. Now, this bulletin was issued just 2 days ago, January 27, 2021 at 11 a.m., and has an expiration date, isn't that odd, of April 30th, 2021. I wonder what's on their agenda. Well, the bulletin goes on with these following bullets. Throughout 2020, domestic violent extremists We're going to call that they call it DVEs, domestic violent extremists. The DVEs targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activity. DVEs motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, and police use of force, have plotted and on occasion carried out attacks against government facilities. Long-standing racial and ethnic tension, including opposition to immigration, has driven the DVE attacks, including a 2019 shooting in El Paso, Texas, that killed 23 people. DHS is concerned these same drivers to violence will remain through early 2021, and some DVEs may be emboldened by the January 6, 2021 breach of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., to target elected officials and government facilities. The DHS remains concerned that homegrown violent extremists, these are called HVEs, inspired by foreign terrorist groups who committed 3 attacks targeting government officials in 2020, remain a threat. Threats of violence against critical infrastructure, including the electric and telecommunications and healthcare sectors, increased in 2020, with violent extremists citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19 for their actions. DHS, as well as other federal agencies and law enforcement partners, will continue to take precautions to protect people and infrastructure across the United States. DHS remains committed to preventing violence and threats meant to intimidate or coerce specific populations on the basis of their religion, race, ethnicity, identity, or political views. DHS encourages state, local, tribal, and territorial homeland security partners to continue prioritizing physical security measures, particularly around government facilities, to protect people and critical infrastructure. You might want to listen to that again. What else happened this week? Let's see. Well, YouTube, they banned Trump. They extended the ban. On Tuesday of this week, Google-owned YouTube announced that its ban on former president or President Trump would be extended, but at this time, there was no end date announced. Comments on Trump's videos will also remain disabled indefinitely, CNET reported. YouTube spokesperson Ivy Choi stated, quote, "In light of concerns about the ongoing potential for violence," there it is again, "the Donald J. Trump channel will remain suspended. Our teams are staying vigilant, of course, and closely monitoring for any new developments," end quote. Trump has a reportedly close to 3 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. He's currently also banned from more than 10 platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, and all those that smash Q and smash don't trust the plan and all that. Well, Q told us a long time ago, and then recently that this blackout and this issue would be here. Lo and behold, it is. Facebook COO, Chief Operations Officer Sheryl Sandberg, told Reuters that Facebook had no plans to lift its indefinite ban on Trump. "Our ban is indefinite," end quote. So big tech issues have also come under fire. Recently over there in Russia, Vladimir Putin warned of U.S. big tech dominance. You know, you're right, Putin. Putin's comments came just one day after he held his first phone call with Joe Biden, the belligerent occupier. The Russian leader questioned whether the recent behavior of some U.S. firms in the country's presidential election raised the prospect of tougher regulation. Big tech monopoly giants compete with nations, he said. They serve or restrict the natural human right to decide how to live, what to choose, which position to express freely, end quote. So all of this brings us back around to what Donald Trump was highlighting prior to being kicked off the media and almost all the social media platforms, that being Section 230, which he talked about all year. Section 230 and the absolute need to repeal it. This administration, I highly doubt it, but this administration, I believe, is short-lived.